Speaking of the market cycle, best case, worst case, how far do we have to go? Time, price, within a few trillion. I see you're wearing your few trillion shirt. Is that what you got there?
No, this is just a normal one. This isn't the few trillion.
Get the merch at intothecryptoverse.com. All right.
Yeah. I think that, a lot of people I think are thinking the cycle ends like this month or next month. I know some people thought it ended in September, some in April. You sort of have the whole spectrum of like what people believe is going to happen. And I think that I think people give themselves too much credit and like the ability, because I don't think any one of us has the ability to tell, to say exactly when the peak will be. I think the mentality of literally everyone in crypto just circling around and saying, all right, everything's going to go parabolic in December and then come crashing down mid-December like it did last year, December 17th, and then come crashing back down and then go into a long bear market. I think people give themselves too much credit. Like generally that's not how markets work. It's not like the majority gets it right. And it certainly seems like a lot of people think that's going to happen. I think that, I think that this cycle, we have a long ways to go is my personal opinion. I think we are going to go into next year for sure. As far as how far it could go out, I mean, maybe summer of 2022, maybe the end of 2022. I think there's even some evidence to suggest it could last until 2023, for all we know. I mean, again, a lot of that's just dubious speculation, and I don't say it lightly. But I mean, the 2023 stuff comes from like if you just take the prior three peaks and you sort of plot it on our Arrhenius plot of 1 over time. And
do you have that on the chart you want to show, or?
I don't actually have it. I don't have it on me right now.
That's all right. Right.
Yeah, but I do have it on my channel. I talk about it quite frequently. Basically, it would put the next peak out in August of 2023. Actually,
that's a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a long way, and it sounds crazy, right? Like it doesn't really seem like it makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of other things that point towards 2022 is certainly a time. My main conviction since 2019 is that I just don't think it's in 2021. Like I think that everyone thinks that it's going to be in 2021, but I don't think it's going to be in 2021. So I think the market is going to keep people on their toes, right? I think the idea that we know what's going to happen is a little bit too far-fetched. And again, look, I mean, Bitcoin's still trading at what, $64,000. 2021, before we started 2021, it was supposed to be the year, according to a lot of people, that we were going to go to 300K, right? We've actually been trading between 30 and 65K, more or less, for the entirety of the year, right? It's actually been more or less a sideways year for Bitcoin. The actual year that we did pretty good was 2020. I mean, we started, at one point in 2020, we were at $3,800. And by the end of the year, we were at $29,000. So you're talking about going up like 9x over the span of 9 months. For Bitcoin to have gone up 9x in 2021, we need to be trading at $270,000, and we're nowhere near it. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to those valuations by the end of the year. So 2021 has actually been more or less a sideways year for Bitcoin, not the parabolic rally, at least not so far, that everyone was counting on. In terms
do you think that still? Sorry, do you think that still works in with the 4-year cycle? I mean, I know I watched the video you did with Bob Lucas, and he has a lot of good stuff on his channel and what to say. Does that still work in with the lengthening cycle and your 4-year cycle?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you define the 4-year cycle. So a lot of people define the 4-year cycle as when the peaks are. So they look at a chart and say, well, we had a peak in December of 2017, and then they'll say we had a peak in December of 2013, which really is not true. It was November of 2013. And then the peak before that most people ignore, conveniently, I might add, is the one in June of 2011. And so I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the only 4-year cycle that Bitcoin ever had was the last one. You could argue that the first cycle had a peak in 2011 in a relatively short period of time. The second cycle was 2.5 years, the one that took place in 2012 to 2013. And then the third cycle was 4-year cycle. And then this one, in my opinion, is going to be longer than 4 years. Now, a lot of people, not Bob Lucas, believe that the 4-year cycle is defined by the peaks, right? And that means that you have to have a peak in December for it to be a 4-year cycle. Bob Lucas is a very strong proponent of the 4-year cycle. He doesn't measure it by the tops. He measures it by the bottoms. And so theoretically, you could still have a lengthened cycle, and it still be in agreement with a 4-year cycle if you measure it from the bottom. Let me just show you on my screen if I can.
Yeah, I'll bring that up.
So like the 4-year cycle, I think as you mentioned, Bob Lucas, like he more or less thinks the next market cycle bottom is going to be somewhere in December, I think, of 2022. Again, this is the last time I spoke to him, and this is more or less just like vague predictions. I don't think he's saying 100% that's going to happen. I know that he wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But you could imagine that you could have a lengthened cycle where something like this happens, where we go up and maybe put in a market cycle peak in the summer of 2022. And then if we have a very brief bear market where we come back down, it would still sort of fit the 4-year cycle narrative of, okay, well, maybe that's the next market cycle bottom over there, which could correspond to the current prices today, right? And this is the market cycle bottom here. And then that could be 4 years apart, right? That could be 4 years apart from say, December 2018 till December 2022. But it's still technically a lengthened cycle if you measure it from the bottom to the top, right? If you're talking about December 2018, if the cycle extends out until 2022, I mean, that's certainly from bottom to top, you have a lengthened cycle, right?
Sure.
And I don't think many people can dispute that. I mean, already we're lengthened as measured from the halving. That's already happened, which, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to nickel and dime if it happens within 1 or 2 months. It could still be a 4-year cycle as measured that way. But if we pull it up as say measured from the halving, or as say measured from the market cycle bottom, I'll pull both of those up really quick and then just show you what I'm talking about. Sometimes it takes us a minute to load just because it's pulling in a lot of data. This is as measured from the halving. So you can see that already as measured from the halving, from the first halving, we went out, a certain amount of time. The second halving, the rally after the second halving took an extra 162 days. So, I mean, it's hard to know exactly how much longer this one will take, but we're already out 28 days past as far as last one. If we went another 100-something days, again, it could easily go into 2022. And then the other way to look at this is to just look at as measured from the market cycle bottom, and you can easily see that the cycle has lengthened every single time, right? This one increased by about 480 days. This one increased by about 300 and something days. So we're actually coming on the point now, I think within 5 days or so, the cycle will be the same length as the last market cycle as measured from bottom to top. But I'm speculating that we still have a ways to go, mainly just because that's what we've seen before, right? We're sort of seeing the cycles lengthen over here. So I would argue that Bitcoin still has a way to go this market cycle. And we probably won't go to go to your question about sort of like projections and whatnot. I don't think that Bitcoin's going to go to those crazier valuations of like $300,000, $400,000. It could make it there, but I would say I do believe it'll go above 100K, and I think it could even make it to 200K or so. But I don't think it's going to go to like, some people are talking about like 500K and that kind of stuff within, by the end of the year, believe it or not, or within say 3 months. I mean, obviously now that stuff sounds very far-fetched because we're now only like 6 weeks away. But there are a lot of theories. And the reason they have these theories, again, are just because we saw what happened in 2017 when things basically just shot up. In 2013, things basically shot up. So people are basically assuming that today, things are just going to shoot up in the last 3 months of the year. But actually the last month, we've just been going sideways.
And I guess the only way we could get there is if more supply comes off the exchanges and it just becomes a spike into low liquidity. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it just takes a lot more volume to move the price now, nowadays than compared to back then. So it's just a lot harder to, I think some people look at it and say, well, look, I mean, Bitcoin went up, 150% or something in November of 2013. Therefore, it's going to do it in November of 2021. And it's just like, well, the market cap, that's the reason why people love micro caps, right? It's so easy to move the market cap because it takes so little volume. With
exactly.
Bitcoin, with Bitcoin, that's just simply not the case. So I think we have to assume that we're going to see it take longer to move up, but that doesn't mean you can't make a lot of money. It just means you have to be more patient.